Hi everyone watching. My name is Mary and I'm a data analyst. Now you might ask, what is a data analyst? Well, simply put, data is information, and as a data analyst, we retrieve and gather information and organize it in a way that business users can make impactful business decisions from the data that they have. So I really got interested in data when I had to perform analysis on the Titanic Data Set. Now, we've all heard about the Titanic Data Set or even watched the movie, but the ability for me to play around in the data and actually find real meaningful truths and that correlated to the movie, I found that so amazing, and that's kind of where my passion grew. Now, the tool that I use is Python, but I'm going to be showing this analysis in Jupyter Notebook. There are a few other tools that data analysts use, like SQL or Tableau for visualization, but for now, I'm going to stick with Jupyter Notebook so that I can show you kind of briefly what a data analyst would do. Now, without further ado, let's dive right in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import our libraries. Now, libraries consist of functions that are handy to have when performing our analysis. So let me just import our libraries or our packages as well. And now we're going to move on to data cleaning. So it's important to do data cleaning or to perform data cleaning from the very beginning, because it makes sure that the quality of our data is as clean as possible. And so we are able to gather as much information as we can from the data without any skewness or outliers or anything that would disrupt the flow of our data or the quality and performance of our data. So this is just a quick data description of our data. So we're going to focus on P class, which is passenger class. So you can be either in first class, second class, or third class. And it's just basically just a representation of your status, your social status. And then we have survival, which is encoded as 0 for no and 1 for yes. We have the name, we have the sex of passengers, and the age of passengers. So these 4 variables, or also another name is features, will be very important for us during our data analysis. Okay. So Kaggle is the world's largest repository of data sets. So if you're really interested in analyzing data, I would urge you to get to look up kaggle.com, and there you can find a lot of data sets, a lot of codes as well, that would kind of help you and assist you in terms of analyzing a data set. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to load in this Titanic data set. And here we can see what the output looks like. So we can see that deck has a lot of missing variables, and this again leads to our data quality issues. So we have a really bad, we have missing entries, which can actually affect our analysis in the data set. So we want to see, is there any other missing variables within the remaining column of our data set? So we won't be using deck in our analysis because for me, it's not really important at the moment. But for different analysis, you can find out different questions in terms of deck or cabin, if that's what you were looking for. But for now, that's not what I'm looking for. So I'm not taking any heed to the deck variable, but I want to see what other variables have missing information. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to get the sum of all the missing information, and we can see age has 177 missing information. Now, there are 2 things I can do. I can either drop the entries that have missing information in the age column, or I can replace these missing entries with the mean of the age variable. So what I'm going to do is, because our sample data is 891 entries, it's not large to drop much needed rows in our analysis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the mean. I'm going to replace the missing entries with the mean of the age column. So, and I'm also going to do it by passenger class. So for each passenger class, 4 females, I'm going to replace the missing information associated to those passengers class with the mean. So here we can see for females in first class, the mean age is 34. So it's just going to replace that empty cell with 34. So let me run this code. So this is a function, and in this function is an if statement. So this is going to look for all the rows that have missing information, and then it's going to put in place the mean of those ages with respect to their passenger class and their sex. Okay, so that's what I've run the code, and you can see, for example, here for 20, what is it, 20, sorry, for 800 entry 888, you can see that it's 21.75, and this is relating to 21.75 for these females in the third class. Okay, so the reason why I know this is because I know what the associating variables are in regards to sex and passenger class, so I can easily tell. Okay, so now we want to see what the data looks like. Good, so we have no missing information, so all our data is clean here for these variables. For these variables here, like deck and embark town, it's not really needed in our analysis, and usually I will drop these variables, but for now, that's okay. I'm not going to take heed to them anyway, so we can just move on. Okay, now if I do Titanic.describe, this is going to give me the summary statistics of our variables in our numeric variables in our data set. Now, survived isn't really giving us much because it's encoded as 0 for not surviving and 1 for surviving. So the mean isn't really it doesn't give us any interesting information. But what does give us interesting information is the age. So in our data set, the mean age of passengers is 29. So the average number of people are of age 29, and the fare on average, passengers pay 39 pounds or euros. I'm not really sure what the unit is at the moment for their fare. So the unit will probably be in the data description stated earlier. Okay, so let's move on. So now we're going to explore our data. So often in data analysis, there's a question or multiple questions that we're being asked, and it's our job to find answers to it. So I've kind of generated a number of questions for us to find answers to today. So we have 4 questions here, and we're going to go through each one of them and try and find the answers in the data. Now, the first question, what was male and female survival per class and by age? So now the variables of interest is passenger class, age, and then survival, and also sex. Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. So here we're going to get the box plot. We're going to get a box plot of the comparison of male and females, their ages and by class. So we can see here, males are in blue and females are in orange. And we can see first class, second class, third class. Okay, so that's now showing the comparison in terms of age. So on average, for the males in first class are 40 years of age, and in females are around, let's say 35 years of age. And then the age goes down as passenger classes go down. So we can see second class, the age is around 30 years for males and females. And for third class, it's around, let's say the late 20s. That's what the age is like for males and females in the third class passengers. Okay, now we're going to move on to, we're going to move on to visualizing the passenger class, sex, and age in our data set, and to see what the survival is like. Okay, so now we have our plots here. So this is a scatter plot, and now we have this for passenger class, first class passengers. And so we can see the survival is very, the ratio is more favorable to females, because we can see here a lot more females survived than males in the first class passenger, in first class status. So we can see all the blues represent females who survived, whereas the red, there's a lot more red triangles on the male side. Okay, so let's look at it for second class. Again, this is a good representation. A lot more females survived, okay, and then a lot more males died. Okay, so now we're understanding that a lot more females were more likely to survive than there were than there was males. Now let's look at the age group. So we see the age group is pretty even across the range, the number of survivals in the female section, for first class and second class. And let's look for third class. So, sorry, 1 second. Okay, it doesn't really show up. Okay, sorry, it doesn't really show up in the screen that well, but let's look at, sorry, let's look at this. It's a bit hard to see, but you can see now a lot of numbers, a lot of red triangles. So now we're showing that a lot more passengers who were of a third class status were dying again. So now if we just understand what is going on here. So back in the day, there was the concept of ladies first and children first. So now these images are representing that information. But then you can see a lot more death in the third class for third class passengers. Now, if you picture this, a lot of the third class passengers had rooms and accommodations closer to the engines. And if you picture how the Titanic sank, it sank with the engine first. So that's how the Titanic sank. So it went like this. So a lot more passengers who were closest to the engines were more likely to die than they were to survive. And a lot more people who had rooms and accommodations closer to the deck were more likely to survive because they were closer to the lifeboats. And this is what this information is kind of depicting, that females were more likely to survive. And then also first class and second class passengers were more likely to survive because they had rooms closer to the deck, and so they were closer to the lifeboats and they were able to survive more. Whereas the third class passengers, from this red triangles you can see here, it wasn't the case for them. Okay, so let's move on. Apologies about the screen issues at the bottom. Now let's move on to our second question. Did passenger class make any difference to survival? So our previous plot said yes. So let's see again in a different way of analyzing the information. Okay, so we have passenger class here, 1, 2, 3, first, second, third, and we have survival. So 136 people survived with the first class passenger status, 87 for second class, and then 119 for third class. Now, you might think, why is 119 bigger than 87? So what could have happened in this scenario is that a lot of people who were of a third class passenger status might have been bumped up to second class passenger rooms and accommodations, because maybe there was free spaces or free spaces in this in the accommodation or in the level, and that's why you can see this additional amount of people who survived. Okay, but then let's look at the total as well and compare it to the total for third class. So it's 190 people out of 491. So this isn't a huge amount, but still it could be a factor again. But if you look at passenger class, 136 out of 216, this is like a majority of people who were of first class status that survived. So again, you can see where status comes into place for survival. Okay. Now let's look at the percentages. So again, 62%, over 63% of people with a first class status survived. Now, for passenger class, that was 24% out of the total, 24% survived. And then for those passengers with second class statuses, only around 47 people survived. Again, you can see where status is very important for people who survived, because again, accommodation was closer to the deck and they were closer to the lifeboats and they were more likely to survive. Okay, right, let's visualize what our information. Okay, so we can see now survived is the orange and died is the blue. So you can see it again, a majority of people were in first class statuses were more likely to survive. And then if you look at those passengers with third class statuses, they were more likely to die. So again, we can see kind of history come into play, what we've learned from history, what we've seen in the movies, it's all showing up in this data set. So this is why I found it so intriguing and why I found it so enlightening and so finding meaningful truths from the questions that I had. Right, let's move on to our next question. Which gender had a better chance of survival? So males or females? If you remember from the first question, and the very last plot in the first question, there was a lot of females surviving in first class and second class. So let's see if that is true here for this question. Okay, so now we're going to group our information by sex. And we're going to see the number of people who survived from females to males. So we can see 233 females survived out of 214. That's a huge majority. So we can see again, females are more likely to survive from this information, and males 109 out of 57. That's really shocking. Again, it goes back to the kind of conduct that was there back in the day of females first, children first. So females and children were more likely to get on the lifeboat than males. Okay, let's find the percentages. So we can see 74% of females were more likely to survive. And then 18% of males were more likely to survive. Again, this is kind of backing up what we know from history and what we've seen from our analysis so far. Now let's visualize. So yeah, so now we are seeing the proportion of for females and males of survival. And we can see that males were more likely to die again, and females were more likely to survive. Okay. Now, our last question today is, were passengers more likely to survive if they were traveling with others? So we know we have parents and children on the Titanic. We had single passengers traveling by themselves. So let's see what the factor is for what influenced kind of survival, whether you were on your own or you were with other people. Okay, so this is just giving us, I've created new variables of is not alone. So passengers that aren't alone and passengers that are alone. So now we're going to display the information or the summary statistics relating to those variables. So let's see what we are learning from this. So of the people who aren't alone, the mean age is 26 years of age. So on average, passengers who are 26 years of age are more likely to be alone, whereas passengers who are of 31 years of age are more likely to be accompanied by either children or a partner, spouse, or someone else. Okay, and then the fare being paid is around 21 euros or US dollars. Again, currency would be in the date description from earlier. And then we can see that on average, passengers who are 26 years of age paid around 48 euros, let's say. Okay, so we can see a discrepancy in fees for the tickets for people who were onboarding the Titanic alone, or they were coming with a family. So we can see the discrepancy in prices, and this could be another analysis on its own as well. Okay, so let's look at visually what we're seeing. So this is just representing visually what the ages of people who were on board the Titanic alone and not alone. So in blue, we can see the outline that from 0 to 70, where the age ranges for passengers who were on board the Titanic not alone, whereas a lot of people who are from 12 to 80 were on the Titanic alone. Okay. So let's look at this with numerics. Okay, so of the people who are alone on the Titanic, 167 of them survived. Now, this was just 30% of people on the Titanic, whereas people who were not alone, so who were accompanied by spouses or children, they were more likely to survive. And we can see 179 people survived, and that's almost 50% or 51% of people who survived the Titanic. Now we can see that if we think back, this could be true, or this is actually more likely to be true because first of all, siblings would more likely grab their brothers or sisters and bring them aboard on the Titanic. And then parents and children, parents would go on the Titanic, mainly the wives or the mothers, and they would make sure that the children are on the lifeboat for them, so that to ensure their safety and to ensure their survival. Again, we can see the information is in check. It's making meaningful truths, and we can actually derive business information or business impact if we were going to do something different probably in the way the Titanic was built, or if we were to forecast something similar that could happen, then we kind of have an idea of what would happen if the Titanic was to sink today, or if something a similar boat or ship was to sink today. Okay, so that ends our analysis for today. I hope you enjoyed delving into the Titanic data set with me. I truly enjoyed it. I truly enjoyed going back and reminiscing on the data set that really got me in interested in data, and I hope it kind of sparked that interest in you as well. If you have any questions and you want to take a look around my analysis or ask me any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I know my details can be passed on. Also, if you're interested in pursuing a career in data analysis or pursuing a degree or an interest in maths and statistics, again, feel free to reach out to me. But apart from that, thank you very much and have a nice day.